The officer who was responsible for the death of George Floyd was arrested quite some time ago. The 3 other officers who were kneeling on his back have also been charged. Newsweek says prosecutors of George Floyd police officers will struggle to get 4 convictions. Dare I say, it's a setup. We've seen it before. They overcharged these guys and they're not going to win. And what happens when these officers get off? They will then scream no accountability because they don't understand how the law works. Initially, this guy, Chauvin, was charged with 3rd-degree murder. Made a whole lot of sense. They upped it to 2nd-degree murder. I argue you might actually be able to pull that off because we found out that Chauvin actually worked at the same place as George Floyd. So you can probably prove a little bit more than just 3rd degree. These other cops are being charged with aiding and abetting. Now, this is going to be increasingly difficult. It's already almost a long shot. It's close to it, right? These 3 others, definitely. So what happens when a jury says not guilty because they've been overcharged? Riots across the country again. Now, I don't know how long this trial and everything will take. It'll probably won't be until next year. Who knows what? But, you know, I don't necessarily mean it's being set up on purpose, but I'll tell you this. Activists always demand more. In fact, already we heard from activists saying you should get 1st-degree murder. They don't understand what 1st-degree murder is. And you wouldn't be able to prove it. In fact, you'd be able to easily disprove it. And then he would get released. You need to make sure the charges stick and they're applicable and the jury can agree with it. That's law. It's supposed to be fair. And it is. 1st degree doesn't mean like necessarily that he's more or less right or wrong. It just talks about the scale to which he went. You know, the degree to which he went about ending someone's life. Let's read this and read what Newsweek says. They say, amid nationwide protests after the killing of George Floyd, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison last week bumped up the top charge against Derek Chauvin, the officer who pinned Floyd's neck under his knee. Ellison also lodged charges against the other 3 officers at the scene of aiding and abetting 2nd-degree murder. Now that the murder charges have been leveled against all 4 officers, the question is, will they stick? Prosecutions of police officers are notoriously difficult to win. And the 2nd-degree murder charges here are quite aggressive. They wouldn't even be legally possible in most states. But prosecutors have a real chance of convicting Chauvin, legal experts say. Winning jury verdicts against at least 2 of his alleged accomplices will be challenging, though. The officers were all fired shortly after the incident, and after last week's charges are now in custody. Their lawyers either declined to comment or did not respond to Newsweek. The accused officers' likely defense strategies are beginning to come into focus. Clearly, cause of death will be an important issue. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner found that Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest caused by a confluence of circumstances. These included his being restrained by the officers, including neck compression, but also included severe underlying heart disease and powerful drugs in his system, including fentanyl and methamphetamine. The country's autopsy report also opened up some obvious avenues of attack for defense lawyers, finding, quote, no life-threatening injuries and no specific neck injuries. In contrast, 2 medical experts hired by the Floyd family found that Floyd died from asphyxiation from sustained pressure. So they believe that the knee on his neck cut the blood flow to his brain. Another likely focus for the 2 most junior officers who reportedly earned their law enforcement licenses last August will be chain of command. During the incident, one of the rookie officers, Thomas K. Lane, repeatedly urged turning Floyd on his sign, apparently to let him breathe more easily, but was overruled each time by Chauvin, the 19-year veteran. A jury will probably be asked to grapple with whether the more junior officers were justified in deferring to the much more senior officer or should have defied him under these life and death circumstances. I'm going to stop right there and say, I don't think they're going to get off on that one. Nah, just following orders, no one's going to buy that. Sorry. It may work in some circumstances, but they would argue just get up and leave. If someone tells you to kill someone and you say, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, not an excuse. You can argue in defense of the cops. I get it. Nah, sorry, man. Don't care. If it were me, I believe you have a duty. If I think, in fact, this might actually prove fault, to be honest. Check it out. They'll argue. You knew that this was dangerous. You repeatedly said we should move him, yet you remained on top of him. That shows you knew he was in trouble and you did not move. You see how that works? Nah, I don't like that defense one bit. But still, the point is trying to get all of these guys are going to be tough. And when some of them invariably get off, and maybe even Chauvin, like they were saying, it's a long shot, it's aggressive. What do you think is going to happen? I'm not looking forward to it. They say defending Chauvin himself will be more challenging. The chilling videos may prove too damning for any lawyer's argument to overcome. Now, yeah, here's where it comes in, right? That argument about the other officer who knew, that's going to paint a bad picture for Chauvin, because they're going to say you were warned repeatedly by the other officer and he was asking you to move and you refused. What are you going to get him on? Like, he was warned, right? I got to say, though, that's more third-degree murder than second. As longtime Minneapolis criminal defense lawyer Joe Friedberg puts it, when was the last time you had a guy killed on video while he's begging for his life? Yikes, man. To understand the charges and the defenses, first review the grisly facts. The basics are all fairly clear thanks to police scanner recordings and surveillance video from nearby buildings. Let me scroll down past this. They say, at about 8:01 p.m. on May 25th, an employee of the Cup Foods convenience store at the corner of 30th Street in Chicago placed a 911 call. A man had just bought cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. The man was still across the street in a parked Mercedes SUV. Two store employees had asked him to return the cigarettes, but were rebuffed. The man was awfully drunk, and he's not in control of himself, the 911 caller said. I don't want to rehash everything. I want to get to more of what the charges actively are, right? So let's move forward. They say, while on the ground, Floyd continued to repeat, "I can't breathe." This we know. At some point, an unidentified officer responded to Floyd, "You are talking fine." Now, this is a serious problem because we know even if you can talk when you can't breathe, because exerting pressure is easier than breathing in. So think about it this way. If you're laying on the ground with someone putting pressure on your back, deflating your lungs is easy because they're putting pressure on you. Inflating would require you to push up against all of their weight, not something you can easily do. That may be what happened. So I guess all they then do is get into rehashing the story, which I think is unfortunate, because what we need to talk about is, well, let's read this. What we need to talk about is, what does it really mean to have second-degree murder charges, and will they stick? Let's read, though. They said, Officer Lane, one of the least experienced, was evidently uncomfortable with what he was seeing. "Should we roll him on his side?" he asked. "No, staying put where we got him," Chauvin responded. "I am worried about excited delirium or whatever," Lane said. That's why we have him on his stomach. At 8:22, the officers called for non-emergency medical assistance, reporting bleeding from Floyd's mouth, according to the Times and Post accounts. A minute later, the call was upgraded to an emergency. With extraordinary precision, the complaints report that Floyd stopped moving at 8:24:24, and that the video, presumably from one of the officers' body cams, appeared to show Mr. Floyd ceasing to breathe at 8:25:31. "Want to roll him on his side?" Lane said around then. Kong checked Floyd's pulse and said, "I couldn't find one." None of the officers moved from their positions, according to the complaints. Chauvin did not remove his knee from Floyd's neck until 8:27:24, when the EMT ambulance arrived. Floyd was loaded in on a gurney. He was pronounced dead at a hospital at 9:25. Chauvin. Okay, here we go. The charges. This is what I was looking for. Sorry. The initial charges were filed May 29th. The manslaughter charge, punishable by up to 10 years, can be proven if Chauvin took Floyd's life with culpable negligence. The third-degree murder charge, known as depraved mind, requires a worse frame of mind, but still one that falls short of an intent to kill. Though depraved mind might seem a perfect description of Chauvin's apparent indifference to Floyd's desperate pleas, it turns out that there may be a major technical legal hurdle to using the charge in Chauvin's case. The law doesn't support it. It says criminal defense veteran Friedberg, who has practiced in Minneapolis for more than 50 years. He points to an 2006 ruling of the state Supreme Court, which held that depraved mind murder cannot occur where the defendant's actions were focused on a specific person. The law isn't crystal clear on that point, however. In fact, another Minneapolis police officer, Mohammed Noor, so I don't want to rehash all this. I really just want to get to the point where they talk about second degree. They say felony murder can be charged when someone unintentionally dies during the course of an underlying felony. Many states require that the underlying felony can be inherently violent crime like robbery or rape. Minnesota's felony murder law is among the nation's broadest, however, according to Professor Fraze. The state is one of a minority that permit assault to serve as the underlying felony, which is what made it possible for Ellison to charge all of these officers with felony murder. So long as Chauvin intended to inflict bodily harm on Floyd, and he had in fact inflicted substantial bodily harm, he can also be charged with felony murder if Floyd's death resulted, even unintentionally. If the other officers intended to help Chauvin commit the felony assault, they can be charged as accomplices to felony murder. Okay, well, look, I think you get the point. They go into a lot more, and it's a bit overly verbose. The point I'm trying to bring up here that I want to ask, because unfortunately I do have to keep these short. My question to all of you is, do you think second degree would stick? And do you think the overcharging will result in these officers being released? From the sound of things, it sounds like under Minnesota law, they can absolutely get all of them for this. That's the argument they put forward. I got to say, man, I don't buy a defense that you were just following orders from your superior officer. If you're leaning on someone who's screaming, I can't breathe, help me, and begging for their life, and you stay, that's on you, man. That is on you. Whether or not second degree murder sticks, however, I don't know about that, man. And that's the fear. Will these guys get off, and then will there be more rioting? Potentially. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up in a few minutes. Stick around, and I will see you all shortly.